Welcome to Hot Topics, brought to you by the City of Marinette. I'm your host, Pete Schwaba. This is our first show, and I want to welcome you. We'll be discussing many activities of the goings-on in our town and Menominee as well, both sides of the bridge, if you will. Every Wednesday at 6:30 we'll be airing, and I encourage you to listen so you are clued in as to what's going on here in the Twin Cities. Not the main Twin Cities, but our Twin Cities. I'm joined today for our first show. I'm very excited about this. I'm a writer-filmmaker myself. I shot a movie here 15 years ago called The Godfather of Green Bay, and a very good friend of mine who is a native of Marinette, Mike McGuire, you probably know him more than you know me because he spent most of his childhood here too and life, is joining me here today because he made a film called Aquarians, and he shot it here in Marinette 2 years ago. And I am thrilled to have Mike in the studio as our first guest here on Hot Topics. Mike, how are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You are awesome, and you made an awesome film. And I will speak on behalf of our town, my adopted town, your native town, to say that people are thrilled to be able to finally see Aquarians. Everywhere I go around here, it's like, hey, when's the movie coming out? How's Mike doing? You know, and I'm like doing the best I can to relay information, but it's here now. So tell us about Aquarians and where the story comes from.
Sure. As you mentioned, I grew up here. I was a 97 Marinette High School graduate, and I went off to be an actor for a while, and that, had its ups and downs, did some theater, a couple TV appearances. I was living in New York for a while. And after working with a lot of really bad directors and producers, I kind of got this bug in my head that said, maybe you should be doing that job. And that's where I started playing around with writing and directing short films and starting to think more seriously about pivoting my career to be in the film industry. So, I was actually directing a play in New York City and talking to a mentor of mine, this old Irish dude named Nye Herron. And he's a director, a writer. He's done some pretty cool stuff. Worked on all of Jim Sheridan's movies, like the one with 50 Cent and In America, things like that. And he's like, don't study directing. You kind of already get directing. Go study producing. And so I applied to 2 producing programs. Got into the one at AFI, which not a lot of people know about, but is actually one of the top programs in the world, the American Film Institute.
American Film, it's ranked like number 2 behind maybe USC?
But yeah, they're usually neck and neck.
Phenomenal.
And that kind of gave me a formal film education. And, I'd actually started writing the script before I even went to school, though. I had this dream in which my younger brother, Will, who was kind of living a wandering hippie life at the time, was a priest, and he was hanging out with a bunch of high school kids, and that image really stuck with me. And I started thinking for a few years about this story of, like, what would it be like in today's age to be so devoted to your faith that you would choose that cloistered of a lifestyle? And what would that be like for a 24-year-old guy? And That's kind of the impetus for the story. Over the years, I rewrote it, and the film really became more about this exploration of an estranged brotherhood. And these 2 guys living very different lives, coming together years after being apart, and kind of confronting this past event that sort of steered them away from each other in life. And trying to do it in a humorous way. I always wanted to do it here in Marinette because I just felt that there was something really unique about the way people communicate, the sense of humor in the North Woods, and wanting to showcase the landscape in a beautiful way, but in the harshest time of year. So that's why we shot it in the winter. I
think I made a joke to you when I shot my film here. I couldn't believe the outpouring we got from the community. It was amazing. We wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else. But I think by the end of when we were done shooting, everybody was sick of it, ready for us to go home. So I think you waited just long enough, so you got a lot of cooperation too. People had moved on.
Well, can I touch on that for a
absolutely.
second? Yeah, so Michigan actually killed their film incentives 6 months before we shot. And so we were in a position of thinking, geez, do we need to go shoot in Minnesota and get 25% back over there? But, I was going on faith that we would have a showing of support and that people would kind of come out and help us out in ways that would compensate for the lack of a tax incentive, and Wisconsin doesn't have one either. And so that was a little gamble on our part, but the support that we got from this community exceeded our expectations, and really, I couldn't say, more to my gratitude and appreciation for that. You'll see 100 people in our church scenes who just came out to be in the movie, all these different locations. People helped us out with some of the stunts and providing safety and support. It was really incredible. So
that's fantastic. And that you can't put a price on that either. Oh, well, you can if you really delved into it, but you're right. What you would have saved in Minnesota, and that was going to be one of my questions for you, as opposed to going somewhere where you have tax incentives or you shoot it here where you get all this help, it's kind of a wash, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of said you were an actor. I mean, you were on a Law and Order, right?
I was.
That's pretty cool.
Still get my $10 residual checks about 3 times a year.
Those are more than my residuals for a guy thing. So those are like 39-cent checks at this point, which is not even a soda. So tell us about the path you took once you left Marinette that eventually brought you back here to make this personal film. You kind of did already, but you also, this is the first film you directed, and you've got a ton of producing credits now. So talk about what made you want to direct this.
Yeah, well, like I said, when I was in that phase, I was living in New York City. I was acting, and I was actually up in Vermont on a summer theater job. It was an awesome experience at the Dorset Theater Festival, and that's where I had this moment of inspiration and started actually writing the script by hand in a journal that I had, and I'd always intended to direct it. In the process of rewriting it, going to film school, and then starting a career as a producer, I'd always kept that intention, but I really, my standards got higher, my understanding of narrative storytelling became more refined, and then I started working with a lot of first-time directors on their feature films, some second, third time, some very experienced directors, and kind of just accumulating their perspectives and experiences I was having with them to kind of like build up my own toolbox so that when the time came, I would be even more prepared to jump in and execute. Because I knew it was going to be a low-budget film. I wouldn't have a ton of time, a ton of money. So I really wanted to be able to use all my resources as effectively as possible. And I think we did a good job.
I'm talking with director Mike McGuire, a writer-director, producer Mike McGuire. The movie is Aquarians, and it opens this Friday night. I don't even think I told people this yet, but it opens this Friday night at the Mariner and select other theaters around the state of Wisconsin. You got 12, 13 screens, I think, so go to aquariansthemovie.com and find out if it's playing near you. I know it's in Eagle River, Minocqua, La Crosse, Sparta, Shawano, Sturgeon Bay. You got a lot of screens, Ashland, Ironwood, Michigan. Yeah. Before we bring Richard in, I want to tell you in about a minute, if you can do this, I want to share with people how you and I met. Our moms actually mall walked, and I was still living, your stepmom and my mom. My mom sometimes treats me like a stepmom. But that's actually a shot at Carolyn. I don't want to do that. She's a lovely person. Sorry, Carolyn. So anyway, I was living in the Studio City area in L.A., and you were living there, and my mom said, you got to meet Mike. He's, I think you had just graduated. And that's how we met. We were in L.A. Yeah. I don't think I ever met you here, but our moms, your stepmom and my mom, mall walked, and that's how we became friends.
Well, I knew about you for a long time because you had, earlier in your career, you were doing comedy on Comedy Central, and my parents would, like, hey, it's Tom Schwaba's kid, and Tom and Amy's kid. He's on Comedy Central. Let's watch him.
Yeah.
He's very handsome. So
those are fun days.
Sat down for a coffee.
That's awesome. We've been friends ever since. I should also mention that I played Tom Marks in the film. I auditioned for you, which I was more nervous than I thought I would be, actually, but I appreciate that because I had a lot of fun with the role. We were going to have more with Mike McGuire, the director, writer, producer of Aquarians, which opens Friday night at the Mariner. And there's a Q&A. Mike will be there. I will be there, too, if anybody, and I think some other people, too, for the Q&A.
Yeah, we'll have John and Rebecca Thornberry, who are local theater actors, producers, directors, and Trinity McMahon, who is our second AD and associate producer.
Awesome. So when we come back, we will have a special guest joining us from the movie. The hardest working man in show business will be with us in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to Hot Topics with me, Pete Schwaba, brought to you by the City of Marinette on WSFQ Hits 96. We'll be right back.